Welcome to the nutrition component of this course. This is by far my favorite part of the course because here's the thing, we eat all day long, but we don't exercise all day long necessarily, probably not. So nutrition is just such a key component to your overall health journey, and let's go ahead and dive into it. So the first thing is I really like to think about nutrition with what I call my elementary school nutrition math. And it's super simple. We just divide by the 7 days of the week. So if you looked at 7 days a week, 100%, 7 out of 7, that's being perfect every single day with your food. It's unsustainable, and I do not want you to do that. A 6 out of 7, however, is an 85%. That is where you need to be in order to make progress. If you're below an 85% or that 6 out of 7, you're either in maintenance mode or you're slowly regressing. Next on the list would be 5 out of 7 days a week. Once you hit your goal or your target body fat or where you are happy and healthy, that is 5 out of 7. So I need you to be good and do what you need to do 5 out of 7 days a week. That's a 71%. C's get degrees, as they say. So that is maintenance mode. That's where I live currently, and that's where I want you all to live. I do not know a person that can do less than that and still be incredibly healthy. Unless they are training a ton, you can't really get away from that, especially with your nutrition. 5 out of 7 is a 71%. Below that, 4 out of 7% is a 57%. That is regressing. You might be regressing slowly, like over a year or more, or it might be more rapid. I don't even know the percentages below than that because 57% and below is what? It's an F. So at 4 out of 7, you are slowly regressing. But here is the deal. So many people that I come into contact with are living in that time frame. They do well, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe half of Friday, and then they go off course Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, then they try to get back on it. When in reality, that's only 4 out of 7 days, and it's just not good enough to live a healthy life and make progress within your fitness, within your nutrition, within your body composition. So where I need you all to live is 6 out of 7 days a week until you reach the point where you want to maintain. Then you get 5 out of 7. So 1 day a week, I do want you guys to go off track. All right, have that pizza you've been wanting, that burger, that beer, or that drink margarita with friends. That's cool, and it can move in different times of the week. It depends on you. It doesn't always have to be Saturday or Sunday. It could be Taco Tuesday, but that is your 1 day of the week that you get to go off track. But I want you to do that because that helps with sustainability. Without that, you guys are not going to be perfect for too long, and I want you to do this not just for the next 6 weeks, but for the rest of your life to incorporate this kind of philosophy into your overall lifestyle. So that's kind of my big picture here. And what is good? Let's dive into what those good days are, and let's backtrack a little bit and teach you a little bit about nutrition. So metabolism in general, we hear a lot about that. What is that? And that's really just the processes our body needs to maintain life, to produce energy, and the nutrients for metabolism that we get is what? It's food. So it's macro and micronutrients. Macronutrients are things that give us energy, that have calories in it, and micronutrients are vitamins and minerals and things like that are necessary for life but don't have calories. Macronutrients can be broken into a few things, and I'll explain that momentarily. Let's backtrack into calories. So what is a calorie? It's just a unit of measurement. All right, so it's a unit of measurement of energy. So we take in more energy, we have energy to use, but also energy to store. So too many calories is what? Storage. We're storing that energy in our body. Too little calories, we're not doing enough to sustain life. So that's important too. Think about it this way too. When we look at our calories, there's two things that give us calories. I told you one of them already. It's macronutrients. The second thing that give us calories, alcohol. So that's also not necessarily a macronutrient, but it is considered something that gives us calories. So we do want to take that into consideration. Carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. Protein has 4 calories per gram. Fat has 9 calories per gram. And alcohol has 7 calories per gram. So everything we take in has that caloric effect, is energy in our body, and we're going to use it either to do a workout, to live our life, or if we're not utilizing it, what happens? It gets stored. So let's dive into those macronutrients now. What are those? And more information you can read below. I'm just going to go briefly over them with you to not bore you. Carbohydrates, you can look at carbs as our fuel of the body. It's a primary energy source in our body, and it is pretty necessary in order to live our daily lives. There are schools of thought and science that say we don't 100% need a lot of carbs in our body, which is pretty true. But for the most of us, we like carbs and they're not bad. We just want to make sure we get them in enough, in the right amounts, and we are expending energy in order to use those carbohydrates up as well. So remember, and we'll go into this a little bit more in the future, but carbs are not bad. There are just better sources of carbs for us, all right? So we'll get into that. Big picture, let's get into fats now. Fats are an energy source in our body. They also create something called a lipid bilayer, which is the outside of our cells, and protects our cells, makes sure bad things don't get into our cells, so it's a good thing. It also transports fat-soluble vitamins in our body. All right, so fat is important, like I said. Better fats, worse fats, there's things that we utilize better than others, things that we can't even use as energy and we store, such as trans fats and very processed items that we want to stay away from. Dive into that in a sec. But fats are not a bad thing. Remember, how many calories per gram though? 9 calories per gram. They have much more energy in them, which is why they kind of can get a bad rep. And low-fat diets, which are BS by the way, but they get a bad rap because if we consume too much of them and we're not expending that energy, what happens again? It gets stored in our body. Storage in our body is what? Fat. All right, so we store excess carbs as fat. We store excess fat as fat too. All right, that's just the storage form of energy in our body. All right, next up, protein. Super important. Proteins are the building blocks of our body. So everything in your body, from your hair, nails, skin, muscle, is all made of protein. Really important, also called amino acids. We have essential amino acids, which we need in our body and need to get from food. And those are things that help build all of those things I told you about, the building blocks in our body. Can be used for energy, but they are not a primary energy source. So don't think about consuming protein that you're going to get energy out of. We're using that for growth and repair and regeneration in the body. Super important post-workout. We want to make sure we get that protein in order to repair our muscle tissue that we broke down during our workout. All right, micronutrients, I talked about that a little bit as well. Just vitamins and minerals. They do not have calories in them, but they are a necessary part of our body. A lot of our metabolic processes and chemical reactions that happen in our body, we need those vitamins for. So super important, get those nutrients inside of them. So this goes back to what's a good carb, what's a good fat, all those things. Guys, keep this super simple. This is not a college course on nutrition and metabolism. This is just basics that I want everybody to know. And that is, what is a good food? Well, keep this simple. If it's real and it roamed on the ground or grew in the ground at some point, it's probably good. If you can eat it raw, it's probably okay for you. So you might see that's kind of weird. I can't eat raw chicken. Well, you technically can if it was extremely, farm-raised, healthy chicken. I guess you technically could, but think about sushi. You can eat meat raw. Anything that can be eaten raw, again, you don't have to eat it raw, but you can, is probably good for us. And if you look at a paleo diet, that's how I align my nutrition philosophy most with the majority of your food loads. 6 out of 7 days should be real food. So a paleo diet, which nuts, seeds, fruits, vegetables, and animal products such as meat should be the vast majority of your diet. Obviously, we want to think about getting the best sources as possible, but any source of those things, even if it's conventional versus organic, is going to be better than a processed version of it. So I'd rather you have a conventional or a non-organic piece of fruit than I would you have some sort of bar that's processed. All right? So as much natural food we can consume, the better. All right, another topic I want everybody to understand is that it is innate in our body for a survival skill to want fats and want carbohydrates. It's not your fault you crave carbs. It's not your fault you crave fattier foods, and I'll tell you why. If we think about ourselves from like a primal perspective, so we are hunter-gatherers, we're utilizing the land in order to find our food, what would we be really excited to find? All right, well, something sweet would be pretty exciting to find because that means it's like a seasonal fruit. And we want to consume as much as we can of that at the time because, once again, it's seasonal. We don't always have berries or fruits available to us in that hunter-gatherer life. So when we find it, we're really excited, and it drives us to go looking for these things. So we innately crave carbs in that way. Similarly with fat, why would we want to strive or crave fat in our diet? Well, it's very nutrient dense. It has a lot of calories. We already talked about that. So if I were a hunter-gatherer and I could find something that could give me a lot of calories, I'd want to consume that because I wouldn't be able to find that all the time most likely. So what would a high-fat food in the wild be? Well, it'd be meat. We don't always have meat in that hunter-gatherer diet, so when we found it, we were really excited. Our body wanted to push us to go find that high-calorie, that highly dense food, and that would push us through these hunts, these expeditions, these things in order to find that. And then when we found it, what would we do? Consume a lot of it because we'd be pretty excited to have it. And why I tell you that, I don't want you guys to think that your mind is messed up in any way for wanting to crave those things. You're not a bad person or a messed up person for craving sweets or craving other high fattier foods, ice creams, things like that, which would be sweets and fat. And you're not bad. Nothing's wrong with you. It's totally a survival mechanism that we've utilized for hundreds of thousands of years in order to become the species that we are today. The problem today is what? We're not a hunter-gatherer species, but we still have that innate survivalism mentality. I don't need to go hunting to find meat. I can just go to any restaurant or go to the grocery store and get it. Same with fruits, vegetables. We don't even have seasonal stuff anymore. Because the power of transportation, we can have a banana at all times of the year, even if it's not technically seasonal. So just know that in your head, this is not a messed up thing for you. It is just a natural thing that we strive for. So I just want you guys to understand that. What does this all come down to? Well, it's energy balance and energy expenditure. The more energy, or whatever, what was that? Calories, right? The more energy I take in, and more calories I take in, the more energy I have. If I expend that energy, great, I'm able to utilize that. If I don't, it gets stored in my body, and our storage form is fat. So throughout this challenge and throughout life in general, we should be thinking about energy expenditure. If we are expending a lot of energy that day, it's okay to consume a little bit more calories. If we're not expending a lot of energy that day or that week, we need to make sure we moderate those calories. In order to lose weight, we need to be at a slight deficit. And when I say weight, I really want to emphasize body fat. That's where we want to focus on. If I'm at that slight calorie deficit, my body will take up, if it needs extra energy, it will utilize and go into my body fat stores. That's what we want, is to utilize that excess body fat, decrease our overall body fat, and make our body composition something that is healthy and something that we're happy and confident about. I went into the main staples of your food, which we'll dive into a little bit more when we look at your nutrition tracker and we go into your actual nutrition plan. But we want to keep that nutrition as real as possible, real things that have grown on the ground or roamed on the ground before. There are a couple things within our diet, in the American diet or the typical diet, that are kind of not aligned with that. We have a lot of dairy, for example. We have a lot of gluten, and we have a lot of soy. Those are all three processed items that we want to make sure that we do not eat in excess. On your cheat day, I give you permission, as long as you don't have a gluten, dairy, or soy intolerance, to have some of those. We want to make sure they're just not in excess. If you do have a dairy intolerance, gluten intolerance, or maybe a soy intolerance, you definitely want to stay away from those. Now, we could go deeper into that. That's not just the scope of what we're doing here. There are some better forms of dairy, such as less processed, maybe even raw versions of that, which if that's part of your current nutrition or you really enjoy, that's great. I do have a very low processed Greek yogurt almost every single day in my current diet, and that's okay. That works for me. But if you do have an intolerance, you definitely want to stay away from those things. If you don't seem to have an intolerance, then in moderation is probably just okay. All right, now let's get into kind of the timing of nutrients and nutrient windows and some intermittent fasting. So I don't really believe in nutrient windows or timing. I want you to get the appropriate calories and macronutrients of real food in on a daily basis. I've worked with and read evidence about people that have one meal a day that are very successful. I have read and believed in evidence that eating more of like a hunter-gatherer type diet where we're eating regularly throughout the day is better for them. Ultimately, you need to experience what's best for you and your lifestyle. If you have a lifestyle in which, really works to only eat one or two major meals every day, then that's maybe what we should try and see if it works for you. And if it's working, great. If not, we'll help you modify things. Personally, I have found the best results with the individual I work with. We eat every couple of hours. Every 2 to 3 hours, we get something in. I feel that keeps their metabolism higher. It makes them not as hungry at that next meal, so they tend to not overeat. And it just creates a healthy habit of eating regularly and getting these small meals or snacks in throughout the day. So what has worked best for me, I really like about 4 to 6 times a day getting a meal or a snack in. I really recommend that to most people. Now when we go to intermittent fasting, I'm not going to go super duper into this, but what I will say is everybody should be doing some sort of intermittent fast. Everyone. Yeah, that includes you. But it might look like this for you. It might be 12 hours on, 12 hours off. That's what a lot of people do. I might eat from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or something like that while I'm awake, and then I go to sleep. And I don't eat, an hour or two before bed, and maybe I don't eat right away when I wake up. So most people do some sort of intermittent fast already. The most common form of intermittent fasting is like a 16-hour non-eating window and an 8-hour eating window. That has been very popular. It has shown to be beneficial in terms of research that they've released for potential cancer benefits, for potential hormone benefits. And what it also does, it just doesn't allow you to overeat very well because you only have about 8 hours to eat. So should you intermittent fast, I think you should try, and if it works for you and aligns with your lifestyle, it could be great. For others, especially women, and I've read some studies about postmenopausal women as well, in intermittent fasting, not necessarily the best thing for you. However, I'm a huge believer in anecdotal evidence. If something works for you and you're getting the results you want, then you should probably keep doing it. And if it's not working for you, then don't do it. Also make sure, I always talk to people about this with their lifestyle, does intermittent fasting align with your lifestyle? For example, it doesn't align with my lifestyle. So I do not do a 16, 8-hour window for intermittent fasting. I'm more of a 12-12 kind of guy. And it doesn't align with my lifestyle because I like to have breakfast in the morning with my children. We do that before school. I think that's an important start to their day. And I like to sit down and eat with them. We eat at the table together. Same thing goes in the evening. We eat as a family every single night at our table, and that wouldn't align with an intermittent fast for me because I want to have those 2 meals with them at the beginning and the end of my day, which would not be an 8-hour window. However, try it out, and if it's something that works for you, great. But if it doesn't work with your lifestyle or you're missing out on more important time, like time with your family, that's going to be more important than whether intermittent fasting is going to solve your problems or not. Let's go to those killer liquid calories now. Not just alcohol. First dive into sugary drinks, juices, soft drinks, other sports drinks like Gatorade. I do not believe in them. You should be sticking to water. About half your body weight in ounces of water is ideal a day, give or take. You could add some electrolytes in there or some other little flavoring if you have to. But if you can learn how to love water, that is the best thing you can do for your body. Sugary drinks, you're just adding unnecessary calories into your life. We do not want, going back to our initial, trying to stay away from processed and ultra-processed foods as much as possible. If something has added calories in it, we probably do not want it in our diet, in our nutrition. So looking at those bottles, if there's added sugar in there, we want to stay away from it. Stay away from those drinks. Now, something like a Gatorade Zero that has 0 calories in it, it's better than something that has a bunch of calories in it or a bunch of added sugar in it. But here's the thing, I want you to get you used to water as much as possible, as soon as possible. So I don't love tricking our body into things that can also mess up a little bit our insulin response and glucose as we are taking in fake sugars. And our body thinks we're getting sugars in, but we're not. So it can mess with insulin and glucose and glucagon a little bit, which are hormones in the body that regulate those glucose levels and keep us at homeostasis. So I don't love the fake sugar either. If we can just go ahead and have water, that's the best thing for you. But if you have to do it, do a no-calorie version of it, and at least you're not getting calories and added sugar out of it. Now, let's get into alcohol. Alcohol has calories, obviously, 7 calories per gram. And yeah, here's the thing. I like a margarita. I like to have beer with friends. I'm not saying don't do it, but it needs to be part of that one day a week that you're kind of cheating on your general nutrition. All right? Your general nutrition, that 5 or 6 days a week, depending on what phase you're in, is basically just what you should be eating and drinking on a daily basis. That 1 or 2 days a week that you get, 2 days a week, remember when you're in maintenance, once a week as you're trying to progress, do what you want and have fun. I'm not a big fan of abstaining completely from things unless it is, something within your life that you need to stay away from, which is a whole nother story and out of my zone of knowledge. But if you are, responsibly having alcohol, then make it that 1 day a week. And yes, there are better choices. We want to stick to that minimal to low to no processed as much as possible. So staying away from those sugary drinks and things like that would be a good idea. Try to get as natural of a drink as possible. Whatever that might be, whatever you really like, just kind of think about it and say, is there added sugar in it? Is that natural, or is that something that, is highly processed? Am I doing a rum and Coke, which, now you're doing a sugary drink with your alcohol, or am I doing, a tequila with just some soda water, for example? So try to just make it as minimally processed as possible when it comes to that alcohol, and you get it once a week as you're progressing, at most twice a week as you're trying to maintain. All right, and lastly for our nutrition section right now, there will be 3 primary ways we'll go over that are best for you in terms of how to eat and what's your nutrition. There's 3 ways I create a nutrition program for someone individually, and that you guys need to kind of think about it and see what is best for you. There is logging your food. You might have heard of this. Counting your macros, counting your calories, a food journal, whatever you want to call it, utilizing an app, for example, like MyFitnessPal, which I recommend. That is great for a lot of people, especially if you're a meticulous analytical person. Really good approach for you, most likely. It is going to make sure you have enough calories on a daily basis. You're not overeating, you're not undereating, and you're getting the appropriate macronutrients in your life. Calories are ultimately going to be the most important thing because if we're eating too many calories, even if it's good ones, we're still going to put on weight. If we're eating too little calories, we might mess up some metabolic processes, and we don't want to be at too much of a deficit. So calories are all number 1. Number 2 is going to be that those macronutrients, those carbs, fats, and proteins, and how much of each are you getting. And then number 3, we'll get into food quality. How important are those things? So when we look at that kind of hierarchy, calories are most important at the top. Under that, we'll have macronutrients, and under that, we'll have food quality, and that's conventional versus organic, for example. And logging your food can be really helpful with that. If you're meticulous, if you're analytical, that's the way you should try, especially if you like to eat out a lot. That's a good choice as well, or you want a really flexible diet and eating different stuff all the time. That's a really good approach for you. The next approach is an actual meal plan or a program or a menu in which you're eating the same things all the time. That is great for someone who likes to cook and doesn't really get tired of eating the same things all the time. For example, at our household, we cook about 5 nights a week, and it's almost always the same stuff. We're fine with that. We have dishes that we really like. We might mix and match a little bit. Basically our meals consist of a protein source, a carb source, and a veggie every single meal. And those might move it around, but we cook a lot of the same stuff, and but we might switch out the rice for a sweet potato or something like that. And if you are someone that likes to cook and doesn't mind eating similar stuff all the time, then that's a really good approach for you. And my last approach that I recommend to people is actually a food list. So actually looking at a list of food, and you can eat anything on this list. Anything you want in whatever quantities you want. That is great for someone who doesn't want to pay as much attention to portion size, but you're sticking to very healthy items in which it's challenging to eat too much of. So if you're someone that just doesn't mind, sticking to a list of foods, but kind of wants the flexibility of how much they want to eat, that's a good approach for you. You can do it while you're out, for example, and just say, all right, I'm going to order something from the menu that only has these items, or ask them, what items they have. That's a really good approach, and that's good for you. So we'll dive more into that, but that's the nutrition overview. I hope you guys learned a lot about nutrition and took something from that and was helpful in your journey, and can't wait for you guys to learn more.